Well, let's dive into topic one. So, before we get into the first teaching of Catholic social teaching, which focuses on the life and dignity of the human person, I think Steve, we just need to together step back and just take a breath and say and acknowledge, our country has been in this pressure cooker of racism and other social injustices for years, really forever. But in the last few years, it just seems like there's been so much tension, so much social outcry, and everyone's looking for answers. And where does the church fit into this,
Yeah, because the church does fit into this. And sometimes we're only human and we can get caught up in our emotions and, our experiences. And it's important to, like you said, take a breath and try to make those connections. So we're going to try to help you do that tonight, right?
That's right. I feel like one of the gifts that Christians have is the gift of prayer, in those moments of pause, taking a breath, calling on God also to be a part of a situation, bring some peace to it, bring some love into that situation. Because again, there's so many problems, so many things that need to be addressed in our society. And tonight we're focusing on racism, but really any ism that takes away the dignity of the human person, which is the focus of the first teaching of Catholic social teaching. So I think where we could start is just that word dignity, and kind of what does that word mean to you, Steve, when you hear that word?
That Wow.
Don't say Jesus or love, but
Baptism.
we're thinking back to our quizzes during religious education.
You have to go back a few catechist stream episodes, right, to
That's right.
to catch that. I think about When I think about dignity, I think
Mhm.
about respect.
That's right.
I think about humility. I think about equality. I mean, I think there are a lot of terms that come to mind, and I think it requires more thought and conversation because we don't talk about it all the time.
We don't. And along the lines of respect, one of the verbs that we can bring that, and one of the virtues, cardinal virtues in the Catholic Church, is justice. And one of the ways of respecting somebody is making sure they are given what's due them. And we can say, well, respect's due them, but what goes into to respect, right? It's how we talk to people, it's how we deal with people. Do we deal fairly? It's how we speak about people in their absence and in front of them, to them. So all these things go into giving people their respect and being just towards people. And then, like the church, as it always does, or as Jesus always does, wants to go the next level. And he's got lots of levels. He's got infinite levels. He's got. So this is an infinite growth mindset here that
Yeah,
we're talking about. Yeah. Go
yeah,
ahead,
good
Steve.
point. And I think about joy when I
Mhm.
converted into a real Christian life. Someone taught me about the word joy and how, we should recognize Jesus, others, and then yourself. And it's putting those others before you, and that is showing them dignity, I think, and that we have to have humility to do that. But so often, and sometimes rightfully so, we're hurt um, uh, for various reasons. We may want to put ourselves first. And
Mhm.
certainly, I'm not saying we deny who people are as individuals, but it's an attitude, I think,
Mhm.
that we're able to humble ourselves to recognize that there are others out here and we need to treat them respectfully.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. And I think you had a touched on a very good word earlier, humility, in reference to dignity and respecting somebody's dignity. And that idea of placing oneself under somebody else is what humility is all about. And I think it's to do that, we have to acknowledge first, how are we perceiving somebody? And I think that's a challenge because it makes us dig deep into ourselves and say, am I looking at somebody the way God looks at them? This goes back to us being all created in God's image and likeness. And what a great question to ask ourselves. And again, whether in the context of racism or any kind of ism, anything that diminishes somebody's dignity, how does God see this person? I mean, what a great question. And it takes us out of ourselves, takes us out of our own mind frame, which is probably a wrong mindset, or at least a biased one, and invites the Holy Spirit into that situation. Now, you might not like the response that you get when you open yourself up to grace and say, God, help me understand what I really think and what you really think. But boy, Christians are really called to do that today, and to be an example of that humility.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned the challenge involved with that. And if you need help, as we often remind folks on Catechist Stream, you know, pray for the ability to do that. Pray for the openness to recognize when you experience feelings that can alert your mind that maybe I'm not looking at this the right way, or maybe I'm not valuing someone adequately. So we can pray for God to support us in that and to make us aware. One thing I've learned through getting a little older, I was going to say mature, but I'm not sure if that's the case. But a little older is that my body tells me, my mind tells me, my heart can tell me. I can tell when my pulse is elevating, when I'm getting heated, right? And those are all signs that are, that we can learn to read, that maybe when we're experiencing something like that, it's an opportunity for us to take that breath or to say a prayer and to kind of try to look at things a little differently.
I'm somebody who's wrestled with anxiety for most of my adult life, and psychologists and counselors will talk a lot about the fight or flight mechanism. When someone has a panic attack, you
Yeah.
kind of have this innate dual option here. Either you fight or you run away. But I'm so convinced now, and it's coming out in our conversation about pausing and assessing and inviting the Lord into a situation. I think you have a third option when a situation heats up, and that's to breathe. That's
Yeah.
to call on God. That's to realize that the situation's too much for you. And it's not to run and it's not to fight. It's to stay and it's to invite God in that situation.
Yeah, I love that as a third option. So that might be the catechist stream tip of the day.
So the next level, besides being just to people, is being charitable towards them and literally loving people that, one, you might not understand or agree with or share the same values, but that is what we're called to do as Christians. And another level up, besides praying for people and for ourselves, Catholic social teaching, and particularly this first teaching on life and human dignity, is a call to advocate for people who find themselves on the margins of society. And sometimes we find ourselves on the margins of good society. We're not acting like good citizens, we're not acting like good human beings. So everyone is capable of being a marginal person. But some groups and people are marginalized by society as well. And to actually advocate, to raise our voice in a public square or in a public forum, is part of the call of being a disciple. And this is such an uncomfortable, awkward thing for a lot of people to do. And it's not because they're not good intentioned or they don't care about social causes or injustices. It's just there's no training around this. There's no like preparation for this. People feel unequipped to be social advocates. So I think that's one of the things the church really needs to support us in as catechists and just as people, is how do we advocate in appropriate ways?
Words of wisdom from Deacon Matt. What you're saying is truly so important, because it's one thing to understand ourselves, it's another thing to look at a situation and evaluate it. But maybe the highest level is to be able to respond and, like you said, lend a hand, take some action. It makes me think of some conversations I've had recently with my daughter, who's a preschool teacher and who cares deeply for the children, and has encountered a situation where she feels like some of the children may not be handled properly. And I think we saw something on national news recently, a situation very similar to this, but she struggles with, actually she doesn't struggle with. She knows that she has a voice and that she has to share that. And so I'm very proud of her for being willing to speak up, because we know there can often be implications for taking action. Or, I don't know that it's a whistleblower situation, but even just speaking up about something that you see that you don't think is fair or right,
Mm-hmm.
there could be repercussions. But certainly, if we're just sitting around trying to improve ourselves and analyzing situations but taking no action, how are we making any progress?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, to your point, like, I think it's the Christian duty to advocate, to take action in the end, that has to be the last step. Otherwise, it's just a head game, Christianity, and it's overly spiritualized. because we do live in this world, and to affect change in this world, actions have to be taken, and people have to take those actions.